Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Cold War Preppers Tuesday night nonfiction post-apocalyptic book club. Gosh, it's a great book, one of my favorites. James Wesley Rawles, former MI officer, so a brother in arms with that. And I think it was 2009. I bought it in 2013, but yeah, copyright's 2009. Book on how to survive the end of the world as we know it, or TEOTWAWKI. And tactics, techniques, and technologies for uncertain times. Fantastic book. It is a little bit outdated, but let me tell you, the principles behind it are superior, and you should take a look at it. Hello, Kaylin Strain and Maggie. Good evening. Good to see you. I hope everything is well, that you're not too flooded down there in Florida. I know you've been inundated, but I hope everything's going well for you. Let me see who else. Devil Dog Prepper, good evening, welcome. And but anyhow, just phenomenal book, fantastic book, great ideas. Tonight we're talking about, I basically call it bugging out. That's not what he calls it. He calls it get out of Dodge. And the abbreviation for that, of course, is good. So GOOD, and he's talking about GOOD vehicles and the dreaded trip out of Dodge. So basically how to bug out and then bugging out. Now I'm going to give away my age. Okay. So bear with me. I still use the old language. Okay. So you're going to hear a lot of people talk about bugging in. And to me, that makes no sense whatsoever because bug means to run. So you can bug out, you can run out, or you can, I guess, according to the modern people, run in, but I don't run in. I hunker down. So I've been at this since October of 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we called it hunkering down, or actually just cavemaning. We would get inside of a cinder block fallout shelter. My wife and I were talking about it last night after the live, and I was talking about Lloyd's fallout shelter next door to me when I grew up, when I was 10 years old, and I had to have hand cranks. For the it was not electric powered, it was actually manually powered air induction system and through the filter and everything else. So we had two different ways we could do it. We could either do it through a hand pump on the hands, or it was a bicycle type of a deal, and we had to run that simultaneous with that, and it made it really difficult to crank, but simultaneous with the air pump you had a small generator that it was running a small generator to charge a 12-volt battery, and that 12-volt battery ran the 12-volt lights throughout the entire bunker as well. It was only like a 10 by 12 bunker as far as a fallout shelter, but we thought we were cat's meow because that was better than everybody else back then. So we were primarily hunkered down. The whole bug out thing didn't really happen. And we had another change in terminology. We called ourselves survivalists back then. And then as we got into the Rambo movies in the 70s, then all of a sudden there was this I want to say bushcraft type of a separation that broke off from the survivalists. And so they called themselves survivalists. And so we started calling ourselves preparedness people or preppers. And so the survivalists were the ones who were kind of like Rambo, and they had a bug out bag and they would go out into the woods and they were going to bushcraft it for whatever's going to happen. And then later, I'm going to say probably in the 90s, early 90s, there was a third genre of preparedness-minded people, and that became the homesteaders. And so the homesteaders, in all reality, were probably the original preparedness-minded people because that was their life. And but they just kind of stayed out of the fray. They stayed really out of the limelight and everything for quite a while. And then when they did come into the limelight, when you look at it, that's the one that makes the most sense. They're going to have the longest duration as far as survivability and the capability to endure over time. So, you got those three kind of genres of preparedness-minded people. You have the preppers, which is basically what I am, and that's somebody who is prepared to hunker down, stay where they are, and that's going to be my primary. Now, I do have a secondary of a bug out, and I will tell you, I got caught up in the bug out phase back in the 80s, Had a wonderful bug out bag. And everything was primarily focused towards bugging out in the 80s. But and then my wife, we got married in 84, and she immediately went over to Germany with me. And we were on the east-west German border, a little town called Schöningen. We were detachment Augsburg. Oh, wow, I can show you that. Let me see if I can find you a picture of the Tory Tower. We were right on the east-west German border. USASA detachment Wobeck. And images. So we were right on the east-west German border, and as a matter of fact, we were supposed to wear civilian clothes some of the times. But okay, here we go. Now I can share that. Let me get back to here. So go here, and then I can share screen. Okay, present, share screen. So this is where I was stationed on the east-west German border when we first got married, and there we go. So there you go. So this is a 350-foot tall, what they call the Tory Tower. And you can see we have VHF intercept antennas here, HF down here, and of course around the whole thing. Then we had UHF and SHF intercept antennas, as well as communications antennas up here. And then this was our operations area back here. So the East German border, this is on top, this is in the elm forest. And the East-West German border was 3 miles this way, right down here, right straight in front of us. And so we were actually in the demilitarized zone, listening in on the East Germans and the Soviets. So she thought I was crazy up until the time we got to Germany, and the Army required her to have what they called a NEO bag. And so the NEO bag was NEO, non-combatant evacuation orders. So that was basically a bug out bag. She had to have a bug out bag, and we had a 29-passenger bus at the site. And so if we thought the Soviets were coming across the border, we would put all of our family members on this one bus with a NEO bag, a bug out bag, and then we would ship them to Bremerhaven, and then they would fly home from there. So that was how we got the non-combatants out of the combat area. So that was the bugging out. So our get out of Dodge vehicle there was a 29-passenger diesel bus, which was kind of interesting. I'm of the opinion now. I've gone back to the hunker down genre, and I'm going to say that I am 95% certain that I will be hunkering down. That there's only about a 5% probability that something would happen that would cause me to want to bug out. And then if I bugged out, the question is, where do you bug out to? Because I think everybody else has got these plans. They're going to go to state parks and state forests and national forests, and everybody's going to the same place. So where are you going to go that's different, that you can establish someplace that's going to be decent? Hello, Creative Redundancy. Welcome. Good to see you. Get out of Dodge vehicles and the dreaded trip get out of Dodge, a mix of vehicles. So he talks about he wants a fuel efficient runabout. He prefers a 4-wheel drive, and in his opinion, and this is back in 2009, a used Subaru is the best thing that he would like to have. I would say that back in 2009, my preference would have been a Toyota. It's the Toyota equivalent to a Jeep. It's bigger than a RAV4 now, but back in my day, it was the size of a RAV4. It was basically a Jeep, except that the seats in the back faced each other. What's that called? Land Cruiser, Toyota Land Cruiser. He likes old station wagons, 1960s, 1970s, big block engine, collision resilient, get out of Dodge station wagons. And one he likes really well would be a flat brown 1970 Buick Estate with a 455 cubic inch 4-barrel V8 engine. I will tell you one thing, that is not, in the previous paragraph, he wants something that's fuel efficient. A 455 V8 is not fuel efficient. I can pretty much attest to that. Let me come back to that, Lord Tachanka. We will kind of cover that. I'll cover that at the end. Okay. I would like to stay on focus with what we're doing right here, right now, if you don't mind. Let me see. I think that's a lot of us, and so one of the things I have to realize, because a week from Thursday, I turned 72. So I've been saying 72, but actually a week from Thursday, the 15th, I turned 72. And, with a total hip replacement, 70% disability from the military, I have to be a little bit more realistic. I asked my daughter for one of those big garden wagons from Academy, one of those $85 wagons for Christmas one year. I've got a two-wheel dolly. So all of my bug out stuff is basically going to be pulled either in a buggy or on a two-wheel dolly, or it's going to be in my pickup, one of those three. But I'm not hoofing it up. I'm not going to be walking. That's for certain. Not unless I'm absolutely forced to. He does like motorcycles. He likes a 350cc dirt bike. That would be, back in my day, I had a Yamaha DT1, and the DT1 was a 250cc dirt bike. That was a great bike. Here's the problem with having a motorcycle. And with a motorcycle, your left foot is doing the gear shifting, okay? Down, up, up, down, down, down. And then the right foot is your rear brake for your rear wheel. Your left hand is the clutch, and your right hand is the gas or the throttle. And then the grip for the right hand is your front wheel brake. So if you imagine that, every one of your appendages is busy in the act of driving when you're on a motorcycle. So if you imagine that you're going to have to defend yourself with a weapon or anything like that, or do anything else, it's going to be very difficult if you've got all four of your appendages engaged in actively driving your get out of Dodge vehicle. So, but just that's something you might want to take into consideration. As far as maneuverability, as far as speed, as far as capability, I agree. A motorcycle is just a phenomenal vehicle. During World War II, the Germans had BMWs, and the BMWs, I believe, were 455s, and but they had BMWs with a sidecar, and then quite often the sidecar would have an MG42 mounted on it, which is great. I don't think we're going to see that happening here in the U.S., but that was a great vehicle for them as a war vehicle in World War II. Hello, Gene Sen, welcome. Okay. Perhaps the ultimate for preppers would be a Kawasaki KLR 650 diesel JP8 bike, which is 611 cubic centimeters, civilian equivalent to the M1030 tactical motorcycle, now fielded in small numbers by the Army, Marines, and Air Force. That is a fantastic motorcycle. One thing that I don't like about it is that it's air-cooled. So because it's an air-cooled engine, you have to be moving in order for the air to go over the engine block and keep it cool. I think even Harleys are still air cooled. So if you aren't moving, if you're sitting idle, it's very easy for the engine to overheat if you have it sitting there idling for too long. You want to have it moving as much as possible. He also talks about E85 compatibles, and those are the flex fuel vehicles. He calls them FFVs. I am all for a flex fuel vehicle. I had an F350, a Ford F350 pickup for my disaster response company that was multi-fuel. And let me tell you, those are phenomenal. They are great. You can use gasoline, it can use ethanol, it can use jet fuel, it can use diesel. Just a wonderful vehicle. And I would say that if I were to choose one vehicle that I would say is a good, solid vehicle, it would be that multi-fuel F350. I think that's a fantastic vehicle. He talks about electric ATVs, If I can't have an F-350 multi-fuel, then what I would like to have is a battery-operated golf cart, okay? I think those battery-operated golf carts are going to be fantastic. You can put a solar panel up on top, charge one battery while you're draining the other, swap them out, and continue to go until it got dark, and then you're probably going to be a little bit stranded. Talks about propane vehicles, although I think propane is going to be a little bit difficult to find. The advantages and disadvantages of having diesel. Now, he talks about gray man your vehicle in the sense of, basically the ugliest the vehicle is, the better it's going to be for a get out of Dodge vehicle, because you don't want to draw any attention to you. I don't know what a Rokon motorbike is, Sumi. I'm sorry. So he wants you to be kind of blend into the crowd. Now, so somebody asked the question about camouflage painting your vehicle. He says, yes, do that, but after you get to your bug out location. Don't do it while you're trying to get to your bug out location, because remember, you're trying to fit in with the crowd. So if you have a camouflage vehicle and you're trying to get away from the crowd, they're going to follow you because they think you know what you're doing because you're camouflaged, okay? So anytime you have camouflage clothing or camouflaged equipment, camouflage vehicle, and you're in a world where everybody else is not camouflaged, you're going to stand out like a sore thumb. Now, the good thing here is we have Fort Cavazos, better known as Fort Hood, very close to us. We also have Camp Mabry, equal distance down south. So I'm in between two major military cantonment areas. And so there's an awful lot of military clothing in this area. So if I were to have a current form of battle dress uniform, I guess that would work. Mine is still the old woodland camouflage. Remember, I retired from the Army in 1991, right after we came back from Desert Storm. So we even had to turn in our desert camis because they were so short. Black boots and desert camis. That's what we did for Desert Storm. But anyhow, and then things changed, of course, after that. Andrew McCarthy, welcome. Good evening. And that's a great question. As a matter of fact, this is one of the next things here. The next thing in the book is fuel in a grid down collapse. And so he talks about the availability of fuel. And so chances are that fuel is going to be one of the most in-demand items that they're going to be. So, trying to find it, trying to siphon it. I have a couple siphons that I have purchased through Amazon and other places so that I can siphon gas from other vehicles that may be stranded on the road if my vehicle is working and I can use fuel for it. I also have a couple 2 5-gallon jugs. You got to be careful how much you store. You don't want to violate your insurance policy and have a whole bunch of flammables or explosives or anything like that in your house in case it catches on fire. You want it to still be insured. So you want to stay within those parameters. But he recommends 2 gas stabilizers that you want to make sure you have added to your fuel, and then rotate your fuel. So you're going to use the 10 gallons in your garage. Put 5 gallons in your vehicle. Go to this gas station, fill up, and then fill up that gas can, so that you've always got gas that's no more than 6 months old in your gas can. The 2 gas stabilizers he recommends are PRI-G, PRI-G, and Stabil, STA-BIL. Now, I know you can get Stable at Walmart. PRI-G I had to order on Amazon. But Toolman Tim, that's a fantastic website or YouTube channel. He's out of Canada, and he's the one who convinced me to switch all my Stabil over to PRI-G. They also have PRI-D, and the G is for gasoline, the D is for diesel, but it can rejuvenate old expired fuel. So it gives it a little bit of life back. So, you can bring it back to life. That's the advantage to the PRI-G. It is a little bit more costly, but it does work wonders. And according to this, the maker of that is a company called Nitro Pack. And then he talks about, how to store fuel for the long term. And remember that there's one of the best places you're probably going to get for fuel are going to be old farmhouses and ranches and things like that, because they typically will have anywhere from 55 to 350 gallon gas tanks on their property. Now, this is tax-free or tax-reduced gas, so it's got a marker dye in it, so that once you burn it inside your engine, it changes the inside color of your pistons and cylinders to a pink color to show that you're burning reduced tax gasoline in your vehicle. So it's supposed to only be used for farm vehicles or ranch vehicles. But I think in a post-TEOTWAWKI type of a post-SHTF environment, nobody's going to be tearing your engine apart to see whether or not you're burning taxed gasoline or not. But that's pretty much where we are. That's kind of the end of what he wanted to discuss as far as get out of Dodge. So absolutely correct. So one of the things that's probably going to happen is that you're going to actually puncture a hole in the gas tank from the bottom and then get it out that way. But you can use a siphon the same way, in the sense that you're going to have a pan underneath of the vehicle. You drill the hole, gas comes down into the pan, whatever you're going to use, then you're going to siphon it from that pan up into your container. Instead of that beats sloshing it, pulling it, pushing it and everything else, and gas dripping all over the place. So, you're going to use that siphon for basically something like a bread pan or something you're going to put underneath the vehicle to catch the gas when you tap the hole into it. Now, here's another thing, is when you tap the hole in the bottom, you've also got to tap a hole a little bit higher up, because that hole down in the bottom, you're going to get a drip, drip, drip. If you want the water to come out, you've got to put something up top so that the air can go in to allow the gasoline to come out through the bottom. So you're going to need both of those. Okay, let me see. Maggie says, "Oh, the majority of people here are weird." Is that because we're what we are now being labeled as weirdos? You see here. So getting gasoline after TEOTWAWKI or after SHTF, either one, is going to be very, very difficult, Andrew. In all honesty, I'm not even sure if if we have refineries, there might be some. You might find some in some of the larger tanker trucks. There might be a couple gallons left here and there, but like I said, that's going to be typically after about 6 months. That's not going to be anything you really want to burn in your vehicle. I don't know if Maggie, you showed it to me. You sent it to me. There was Jim Jordan sent a letter to the head of YouTube, basically complaining about censorship and preferred treatment of certain subjects and certain political parties over others. And so he's asking him to come to appear before Congress to answer some questions about perceived weaponization of social media against certain groups of people. Tuck by V, help me. I don't know what an LBV is. Is that a load-bearing vehicle? I'm thinking in German, Lastkampfwagen. That's all very opinionated, and I don't mean that in a bad sense. It depends on your opinion of what good gun laws are. In Europe, you can't have a gun, basically. And that's going to be in 95% of Europe. I had to have a special license, and when I had my guns with me, I shipped my guns with me. I showed you the picture where we were at Wobeck. And so when I was at the attachment Wobeck, my guns were shipped to my apartment, and then I had to have those turned over and put into the armory there at that site. I was not allowed to keep them in my apartment in Germany because it's against the law in Germany. Now I was allowed to keep my shotguns, and then I was allowed to keep my 22. So 22 long rifle and shotguns were the only things I was allowed to have in my apartment in Germany until I moved on post. And when I moved on post, I was allowed to have them inside my apartment or inside my quarters. But in Europe, you're not allowed to have weapons. So it depends on your definition of what better gun laws are. I like the Second Amendment. I like the better gun laws of I'm allowed to defend myself. Just depends on what your opinion is on that, I guess, as to which way you define better. So Theoxorus has an oil punch, an oil pan, and a fun. Exactly. And that's what I'm talking about. Now, it might even behoove you to have a siphon there, Theoxorus, because what you can do is, you've got that pan underneath the vehicle, then you can be off to the side of the vehicle. And if you've got your siphon down inside that pan, then you're pretty much away from all those fumes and everything else. Fumes can get really bad. And remember, it's not the liquid gasoline that burns, it's actually the fumes that burn. So if for some reason there was something that would cause it to catch fire and you're under the vehicle with it, you're gone, okay? So I'd prefer to be a little bit further away from it and use a siphon down into the pan to stay away from that. Okay. Hello, Roger Moore. Welcome. Good to see you. Welcome. So happy you joined us. Yes, good idea. Absolutely. Great idea. Kaylin doesn't know anything that uses gasoline, so she doesn't store it. I will tell you, on my disaster response trailer, my kitchen, I had an Onan 5 kW propane generator. Quiet. The sucker, if you didn't keep it tuned, it was maintenance intensive. You had to keep the spark plugs; they would foul after about 250 hours. You had to change the filters about every 100 hours. But as long as you maintained it, it was one of the best pieces of equipment I've ever had. Once it went bad, once you started needing maintenance, it sucked the propane like you would not believe, and it burned hot. We took the trailer to a drag boat race in Brady, Texas. We went to the drag boat races there, and we were selling food and drinks and everything there. And it was a 112-degree day, and my propane generator, my Onan, needed maintenance. And I was going through the little 5-pound bottles of propane about every hour. My 100-pounders went dry real quick. I had two 100-pounders on it, and then I was sending people in. As soon as they could get into town and get a 5-pounder filled and come back, the other one would be empty. So propane's great as long as you can maintain it. Which brings me to another thought. So as we start talking about those get out of Dodge vehicles, get out of Dodge equipment, generators and everything else, don't just plan on having the generator. Make sure you have all the maintenance parts and oil and other things you're going to need to maintain it. So you're going to need air filters. You're going to need spark plugs. You're going to need belts and all kinds of different things you're going to need to maintain those in order to keep them in operational status. And spark plugs and a gap measurer and oh gosh, it's so much fun. Yes, it requires a lot of maintenance when you're going to have an alternative form of power. Yeah, they've got the anti-siphon deflector there in the filler tank. So yes, you're absolutely right, Utah Mike. So Maggie's tested a fishing cleaning manual pump. Yes. So you're talking about basically it's got a bulb and it sucks the water up, and then it's got a small bag that collects all the poop when you're cleaning your fish tank. I use that. That's going to be one of my water filtration, water collection means, is suck the water up through the bulb, get it through that bag, because that's a 0.05 micron bag, those bags for cleaning fish tanks. And so when you get that out, then you can set it on top of a bottle like this bottle, set that bag up on top, and it'll drip down inside of it, and that'll be clean water. So it's going to be 0.05 micron clean, which is pretty good. So yes, but that pump is a fantastic little pump as well. Okay, let me see. Tuck by V. Okay, so earlier Tuck by V asked my opinion of the things that are going on in England and Northern Ireland that are going on right now. So one of the things that I keep here, you don't see it, but I get alerts all the time. BBC News is one of my favorite news sources. I like them reporting on the U.S. more than I do any U.S. Company reporting on the U.S. I also have Israeli 24, which is an Israeli channel that I watch for news. I like TASS, Telegrafная Agentство Sovietskого Soyuza, even though the Sovietsky Soyuz no longer exists. That is the old Soviet news agency, and Russia maintained it, but it's still just called TASS. There's also Mir, and Mir is Russian for either, it has two different meanings. It can either mean world or peace. Then I also have Der Bild, which is a German channel that I like to watch. So I get most of my news from the Brits, and Al Jazeera, and the Arabs, the Jews, Israeli news, the Russians. Gosh, BBC, Germans, Das Bild, Mir, TASS. Yeah. So, but most of my news comes from overseas, and instead of from here in the U.S. But anyhow, so what we see happening is there's a worldwide thing going on, and the worldwide thing is we've had mass migration. People are don't like being where they are and want to be somewhere else. They think it's better than where they are. So we see that, and that's the excuse we have for having an open border right now and allowing people into our country, is that there is a mass migration worldwide. When I lived in Germany up through the end of the 80s, they had what they called Gastarbeiter, or a guest worker. And so the Germans didn't want to do things like street sweeping or trash collection or work in the sewage industry. And so that was all Gastarbeiters, or guest workers. So that 90% of the time that was going to be Turks who came in from Turkey and worked in Germany and did those less than romantic jobs. Okay. And so as they developed into this middle class, we've seen more and more people from North Africa, people from the Middle East moving into Europe, especially once the EU transpired, and we had basically open borders. So there is no more what you might call national borders the way they used to be. So when I was in Germany, if we wanted to go to Paris, for example, on the train, we would stop at the border crossing and we'd have to show our passports. And then we get our passport stamped that we were allowed to go into France. And then same thing, coming back to Germany, we'd stop at the border, we'd show our passport, they'd let us into Germany. It was that way around Europe until the EU. When the EU happened, as long as you're a member of the EU, then you could go from one country to the next, no passport required. So that was a vast majority of Europe were members of the EU. So there was no requirement for a passport to get from one country to the next. So of course, Turkey was a member of the EU. Well, Turkey didn't enforce their passports with other Arab countries. So other Arabs could come into Turkey. Then from Turkey, they had free access into Great Britain, into Holland, Scandinavia, Belgium, Germany, France, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, all that area was wide open because of the open border in Turkey. So you had this mass migration of Arabs moving into Europe. And of course, they brought their own culture with them. So there was a culture clash, okay? And pretty much the same culture clash that we saw back from, let's say, 800 AD up until 1492. So most people don't realize it, but the same time that Christopher Columbus was discovering America in 1492 was the Battle of Seville. So the Battle of Seville was the last battle in Spain where the Spanish forces drove the last of the, what were they called? I think it was called the Seleucids, which was basically a northern African Muslim tribe, but they were occupying Spain, and they were driven out of Spain in 1492, the same year that Columbus discovered America. So that's how recent that was. So we had this clash. Right around that same time, we also had the Battle of Vienna. Let me look up the dates on that, but that was King John Sobieski of Poland. Let me see, the Battle of Vienna. 1683, okay? So the Battle of Vienna was, no, that can't be right. It's got to be 1529. Yeah, 1529. The attempt by the Ottoman Empire to capture the capital city of Vienna, Austria. The Holy Roman Empire, and Suleiman the Magnificent, Sultan of the Ottomans, attacked the city with over 100,000 men, while the defenders, led by Nicholas Graf Salm, never numbered more than 21,000. So they sent out a request to all the Holy Roman Empire, and the Holy Roman Empire sent out requests to all their different areas. King John Sobieski of Poland said he would respond. He would come and defend Vienna from the attack by the Ottoman Empire. And so now we're only talking 350 years ago. Remember, this is fairly recent history. And so, of course, the Polish parliament would not give, this is kind of reminiscent of the Spartans, okay? King Leonidas. King Leonidas had his 300, and King John Sobieski had his 300. So he had his personal entourage of dragoons, heavy mounted cavalry, and they said, you can take your dragoons, and that's it, to go fight for the Holy Roman Empire. So he left Poland to fight the Holy Roman Empire, for the Holy Roman Empire. And what he did was he used all the money that Parliament gave him and had his artificers create angel wings. So he had these 10 to 12 foot high angel wings that he put on all of his knights, his dragoons. And so when they got to Vienna, Vienna was under siege. They were outnumbered 100 to 1. And he attacked out of the sun with his 300 dragoons and these angel wings. The Ottoman Empire thought that it was actually the angels of God attacking them. They retreated. The Holy Roman Empire won, and that's the Battle of Vienna. So it's a really interesting thing to happen. But so we've had this culture thing going on in Europe, in the Middle East, gosh, since Abraham, okay, for 3,000 years. And we've got this clash of identities. You've got this clash of beliefs. You've got this clash of everything else. And if you take a look at the history of Israel, there's a mnemonic you can use to remember the history of Israel, and it's a big purple grape. So A, Assyria, big, B, Babylon, purple, P, Persia, grape, G is Greece, and R is Rome. So a big purple grape gives you the 5 conquering armies that conquered that entire area of where Israel is today in succession. The Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, and then the Romans, okay? And then, of course, the Brits after that. But, well, you had the Arab League, basically, the different caliphs and everything else versus the Holy Roman Empire. And so that lasted for almost 600 years, that confrontation as well. So you had this constant back and forth. But that's the clash that's been in Europe and the Middle East for 3,000, 4,000 years. That still exists today. So you've got this mass influx of different beliefs, different customs, different language coming in and not assimilating, but trying to recreate their own culture inside that society. So now instead of being a homogenous society, it's a heterogeneous society. So each has its own little enclaves, okay? That is what the Brits are fighting against. There are some nationalistic Brits who feel that Great Britain has been overrun by these people from the Middle East who are bringing in their culture and forcing it upon the British Empire rather than assimilating into the British Empire. And so they are objecting to it and they're fighting against it. So that's what's going on right now in England, Great Britain, and Northern Ireland. Not too different, okay, from, and I'm not going to say it's just that one culture. There are multiple cultures that we see happening here in the US, but I'm going to say we see a lot of that same feeling here in the US that, hey, yeah, if you want to come join us, but don't come here to recreate what you're running away from, if that makes sense. So I see that same thought process happening here in the States. Can you tell I touched my mouse? So anyhow, so we've got that same problem happening now here in the States. And so that's what's going on there. Am I making sense? Does that make sense that it's all cultural? It's all international movement of people from one place to another. So, that's just kind of how it is. And yeah, don't touch the mouse. But anyhow, so I see it happening in a lot of places. We also have problems right now in Venezuela. The United States is not recognizing the Maduro regime anymore. That we believe that the other party won the election. We're seeing dissatisfaction in Bangladesh. We're seeing another possible conflict between India and Pakistan. Pakistan announced today that they're going to give their nuclear weapons technology and missile capability to Iran for Iran to use against Israel. So, I mean, we're seeing a lot of different things happening throughout the world that tell me that, one of the things you might want to do, I'm getting ready to do a video now. I've got everything set up over here. So the one I'm going to be talking about tonight is make sure you have plenty of ways to start a fire. And I'm going to end it with just simply, today is the day. Starting today, every time you go to the grocery store, pick up at least one box of matches and at least one, if not a package, of Bic lighters. I'm going to put a link in my short for Amazon. And I tell you, for the first 6 years I was on active duty, I carried a Zippo lighter. One can of Zippo lighter fluid, and I smoke 20 cigarettes a day, a pack of cigarettes a day. So I use that Zippo 20 times a day. One can of lighter fluid lasted me a year. I think that if you don't have a Zippo lighter, here as we go forward, that's going to be poo-poo on you. You need to have a Zippo lighter. You need to have a whole bunch of Bic lighters. You need to have a whole bunch of matches. There's another one I really like. Here it is. I can reach it. I don't recommend you spend a whole bunch of money on ferro rods and things like that. I mean, buy the good stuff while it's available instead of depending on that. This is phenomenal. This is USB rechargeable. It's an electric arc lighter. So you can see the electric arc there. That's almost like a plasma gel as far as heat. That will light something that's wet. So, and this is USB rechargeable. So getting a USB rechargeable lighter is phenomenal if you have a small battery pack or a small solar charger, and you can use that to charge your lighters. So I'm saying, people, SHTF is happening. We just aren't it isn't as obvious as we think it might be right now, but we are there. Now is the time to say your priority is to stock up on food, water, fire, means of cooking, means of producing heat. Now is the time to start worrying about how you're going to stay warm this winter. I know it's only 3-4 months away, but now is the time to think about that. How will I stay warm in the winter? And we've got to start taking this stuff serious right now, because I think that here very, very soon, it's going to be important that you have food, water, medicine, heat, a way to start a fire. Let me get up here. Now that I've gotten off my soapbox for just a second, let me get up here and respond to all these fantastic people. Hello, Gene Sen. A 68 Buick Riviera. What a great car, shenanigans. The only thing I would rather have than a 68 Riviera would be a 68 Volkswagen Beetle. That's what I did. No, I had a 64 Volkswagen Beetle. So Maggie has a great suggestion. When you go buy something and you're replacing something, buy two. Okay, instead of buying one, replace it with two. Great idea, Maggie. Thank you. Great tip. Muskoka Oma, here's the thing with the Zippo. When you first fill it up, if you fill it up too much, there's residual. Let me grab mine here just a second. So if you overfill this portion right here, then you've got all this liquid that's going to be caught in between here and here. And so when you close it up and you put it in your pocket, that actually gets squished out the side here. And I can't tell you how many times I overfilled mine and I got a rash on my leg, because that lighter fluid, when it touches your skin for a long period of time, it looks like a gas burn, a rash, let's call it. And I can't tell you how many times that happened in my fatigues and BDUs. You're absolutely right. So you just have to be careful and don't overfill it. So if you just keep it filled on a regular basis and don't overfill it, that should not be a problem. Torch lighters are fantastic too. Love those. There's a new one called an EZ by Bic that I really like. It's got a little bitty tube, a little bit longer, so your finger, so that when you're using it, I have a new one here, brand new one, still in the package. If I can reach it, there we go. I felt it. But this one, it's got this little bit longer tube, and I think that's better for starting fires than having the standard Zippo, standard Bic, and getting down real close to the flame, or real close to what you're trying to ignite. Let me see what Jack is telling us here. Jack says that the Australian government has now raised a terrorist threat and outright named critics of the government as the threat. Yes, same here in the U.S. We are considered, if you are not totally 100% supportive of the regime, then you are considered a threat to the regime. I'm a threat because I'm Catholic. So because we're pro-life and don't support the murder of unborn children, then we are considered to be anti-American. Then I'm also retired military. That's considered a threat. I mean, I'm on so many lists. It's pitiful, just because, I honor life. I respect life. But anyhow, well, I think it's not going to be Cold War II. It's going to be World War III. To be honest with you, there, Lord Tachanka, and there you go, Holly. Way to go. Now, here's another thing you can do. Just consider it. Is get some of the spring type of clips, and you can either get the ones that you're going to use, like for binder clips for papers, or you can get the ones you use to close up your packages of potato chips or anything like that, or you can get the clothesline pins. Okay, any of those. Melt some paraffin, and then once you've melted the paraffin, take your strike anywhere match and dip it in the paraffin. So if this is the head of your match here, you want to dip it down to about here, and then you want to hang it, okay, so that all that paraffin stays on there. You don't want to lay it on something, because if you lay it here, then the bottom side is going to dry and it's not going to have any paraffin on it. But that paraffin will protect that sulfur in your light, in your match, so that you can now have created a waterproof match. So then what you want to do is, after you dip it in that paraffin and just get a little bit of paraffin on it, hang it up and let it dry. And then you can basically stick that in a bucket of water and it's still going to light for you. That's what we used to do in Boy Scouts. So that they've had several knifings in Europe, and because guns are not allowed. So, and I refer to those as assault knives. Utah Mike, what a great present. That's very thoughtful of you. And I think that's very wise of you, little lone prepper. And then make sure you have a small solar system, so you can, that has the plug-in capability, or get one of these. Okay, this little no, this is not it. I have a little Cato. This is strictly battery operated, but I have a little Cato, and I think it's called the Roadrunner. Yeah, but it has a solar battery up top. It has AAA's. It also has a hang crank, and then it has a USB outlet port on it that you can use to recharge things like your lighter and things like that. I am convinced all of my flashlights now, I don't have any battery operated flashlights that I purchased in the last couple of years. They're all USB rechargeable. I just think that's the way to go, because that is an endless supply until you've gone through the maximum number of recharges on your battery inside the inherent to the article. Suburban Prepper, that's a new name. Hi, Suburban Prepper. Welcome. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Let me see. Wow, what a deal. So in the Army, we had 80% wool, 20% cotton. Love them. Combat boot socks are the best socks on the face of the earth. And they actually, you could get them wet, and then it would just kind of, what do they call it, wilt away. And so it was just great. Army combat boot socks are the best socks you can get. And if you can find some, get them. So you need charcoal and propane. Yes. So you can't see it, but if I were to open this and then turn it a little bit, if it were light, you would see that there are three 35-gallon, I think they're 35-gallon trash cans right outside the door here. One of those is filled with nothing but charcoal. Another one is filled with nothing but firewood. And then the third one is a combination of charcoal and, what do they call it? Pellets, wood pellets for a pellet stove. And I bought the wood pellets after I had already had that filled with charcoal. I just wanted a place to put them, so I put them in there. They kind of take up all that space, the volume in between the charcoal pellets. But I do put my charcoal inside of a 55-gallon, what do they call them? Contractor trash bag. So that way, all that charcoal dust from the charcoal banging against each other is also salvageable. Then, of course, I have my biomass briquette maker. So we save all of our toilet paper rolls and paper towels and paper products and everything else. And then I can turn that into a mulch. And then that mulch gets soaked in water. Then I put that in my biomass briquette maker, press all the water out, and then sun dry that. And that becomes basically a fire log. So that's another thing you might want to consider getting. Yeah, Sumi, fantastic. That is the way to go. My problem is I sold my store, and the person who bought the store was supposed to assume the loan on my photocopier and didn't do it. And so I sued them for breach of contract and won. It's because I couldn't afford the $6,000 payments that were still left on the photocopier. And she got to keep the photocopier. So even though I won, it cost me $20,000 in lawyer's fees to win that she's supposed to pay. But then she says, no, I can't afford that. My store isn't making enough money for me to pay that. So I have to pay the $20,000. I sued because I couldn't afford $4,000, right? So now I owe my attorney $20,000 for winning to say that the person owes me $10,000. That includes all the other back stuff, costs and fees, plus the attorney's fees. So she actually owes me now $34,000 for a $5,000 copier, but I'm never going to get it. And so now I have to pay a monthly payment to the attorney who won the case for me, but I'm still poor as all get out. So, that's just the way life goes. And it convinces me that attorneys are in this to keep themselves in business. And the reason that they are mostly in one political party is because that way they can keep themselves and the laws so complicated that we can't do it ourselves. We are totally dependent upon them, and they just keep using us as fodder for them to have a fantastic lifestyle. So that's just my personal opinion. Let me catch up here. Oh, wow. Thank you, Shenanigans. So are you talking about the easy, the BIC extended reach, or are you talking about the electric arc? Or are you talking about the Zippo? Finding Zippo lighter fluid. I tell you, they sell the lighter at Walmart. They do not sell the lighter fluid. So what I recommend, there goes my display for tomorrow or for tonight when I videotape this. What I recommend is this. This is an entire kit. So you can get this on Amazon. I'll put the link down below for after the show. But basically you get a lighter, you get extra flints, and you get a can of lighter fluid. This lighter fluid, I tell you, smoking 20 cigarettes a day lasted me for on average a year. So, and you can get larger ones as well, but trying to find Zippo lighter fluid, or Roncinol is another company who makes lighter fluid. Trying to find those is very difficult. You can get them delivered to you from Amazon, but Walmart doesn't have them anymore. I found them at the Dollar Tree, but that's the only other place I found them. Amen, Jack. Get the original thing. Don't get a ripoff. Spaghetti noodle helps with deep wicks too in candles. I've probably shown you. I know I've done a video on it. One of the things that I do is, number one, when you have an old candle, you get down to the bottom. The easiest way to get that wax out of the bottom is to freeze it. And then after you freeze it, the wax comes out very easily. Then you've got the base, okay, and you've got that the wick is stuck into, and then you got the little piece of wick. So all of that, I have I don't have any here. If you've seen, what? Oh, I know what it was. Was it cabbage? Yeah, my last Pepper Pantry haul. You saw my Mother Earth cabbage, jar of cabbage with that screw top lid. It's the same thing if you go to Sam's or someplace like that. Mixed nuts or cashews or walnuts, they're cans of nuts. This is the exact same thing. That's what I keep all my extra wax in. So when Helen burns a candle down and it's down at the bottom end, I take that wax, I freeze it, I put it in there. I buy wicks, and I buy the bottoms to the wicks, because as we get further into TEOTWAWKI or into SHTF, if you have wicks and leftover wax, you can become a candle maker, and that's going to be something you can provide of service to everybody else. Now, while they're available, this is Lee's rule of thumb. So you don't have to agree with me, but this is just Lee's rule of thumb. Get what you can while you can, and don't get substitutes for it, okay? I know I've seen people saying, I'm buying Crisco so I can have these 25-hour candles. Don't. Don't buy Crisco for cooking. Buy candles for candles. And then if you run out of candles, then if you have any leftover Crisco that's gone bad, instead of using it to cook, use it for a candle. That's how that works. You don't buy things to intentionally use it as a replacement while you have the original thing immediately available to you. So I buy wicks, but I also buy candles. As a matter of fact, we were just on Gil's Grey Man Prepping's site right before this. And the comment was, a lot of people were talking about Azure Standard. I love Azure Standard. I'm an affiliate with them. And but one of the things I really like is they have these 8-inch beeswax candles that are just phenomenal. A half dozen of them for like $9 or $12, and just really great candles. I buy those. I am convinced that that's going to be something of value that I'm going to have for my homestead when SHTF happens. So get the real thing. You can go to Dollar General. They have little 6-packs of 6-hour emergency candles. Get those. The little tea candles. Maggie sent me, was it Maggie? No, it was Sumi. Sumi sent me a video of a woman who was using a muffin tin and had the little tea light candles and put 6 of those inside, or actually it was 4, left 2 of the holes open, put 4 of those, 1 in each hole of a muffin tin, half dozen muffin tin, lit them on fire, put a pan over it, and was able to cook eggs with it. So, those are some of the things you might want to consider, getting something like that. Let me see, catch up because we're at an hour. Well, we're together. We're there together, Kaylin. So we can just hold hands and walk down the road together because we know that we're both on the same list. So I'll be happy to hold your hand. And so the other thing, Maggie, is they just announced today there are 98 people who had come into the United States illegally and were on the terrorist watch list who were released into the U.S. in the last 24 hours. So we know that our government is releasing known terrorists into our country. Let me catch up here. Oh, we just now up to Jack, this is really funny. I think I might have it here. I was making some room in a bookshelf. I found my missal from elementary school, and it's all in Latin. And I was going, oh my gosh, just unbelievable. Dominus veneremos ad altare Dei, Dominus vobiscum et cum spiritu tuu. I still remember the old Latin mass. It's something, but when you do it every day, when I was in school, up until the 8th grade, and then we went to mass every day. And then when I went to Jesuit high school, we went to mass Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We didn't go to school. We didn't go to mass every day. But when you go to mass every day for years and years, you have it memorized after a short while. Let me see. I think that's probably going to do it because I'm not sure I'm going to catch up with all your fantastic chat. I'm happy that you have. So I'll be working with Michelle Mitten. She had a family emergency, and so she was unable to help us last night. But we still want to get her on. I want to talk to her and possibly Maggie. This might be something you want to consider as well. Sumi, I know you have a little bit of expertise in it. I would not be averse to having a panel discussion at all, but that would be around foraging and medicinal herbs and homeopathic medicine, as well as essential oils. I think that having those is going to be critical for us as we go forward into the future. So with that, let me see. Keelan says that the one time she bought Zippo fluid was in Walgreens. Oh, wow. Yeah. And Forever Match, I didn't put one in this thing to show here, but those are great little things to have as well. It's basically a Zippo, self-contained Zippo. The match itself becomes a portable wick, if you will. So yeah, I love those, and they are great. They don't cost that much either. That just a couple dollars, and you've got a great one. Okay, so with that, thank you everybody for being here. I'm sorry we got a little bit off topic, but let me see what we got next week. Next week we're going to be talking about investing, barter, and home-based businesses. So we can do that. Got some ideas for you. Okay, so Book of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 24, 25, 26. Leviticus, Numbers. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. Now, we were taught by the appearance at Fatima of another prayer that I would like to share with you. And if I can remember, gosh, now that I've said that, I'm probably going to forget it. Pater Eternal, Eternal Father, Pater Eternal, I offer you the body, blood, soul, and divinity of your dearly loved Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, an atonement for our sins and those of the whole world. And so we say that we want everybody, dear God, forgive us our sins, lead us all to heaven, especially those, and notice we say lead everyone to heaven, especially those who are in most need of your mercy. So we believe that we are all children of God. And so that there is a path for all of us to have eternal rest in peace. And I wish that upon you. And that's exactly what Numbers 6, verses 24, 25, 26 says. So remember that we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. I can't tell you how much I love you. I love the family that we have created. I love the fact that you are kind, polite, and respectful to each other. We can handle difficult subjects and do it as adults and not do it in a demeaning or in a threatening way, that we respect each other, respect where we come from, respect our beliefs. Thank you so much for that, because you know what? When we rebuild this world after what's happening to it, it's only people like us and what we have to offer each other that is going to be there to rebuild it. So the world will be as we make it. And if we can do it as a team, what a wonderful world it's going to be. So thank you, everybody. I will see you next Monday evening. And then Tuesday evening, we'll be talking about barter. Okay? Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.